Oh, free will. We all want it. We all don't really know how to get it. I think we've all been in a scenario where we want to take on a healthier habit, but we don't. It's because they don't even teach us how our own brains work. We don't understand how to get free will because we don't even know the game that we're playing. Okay? Let me describe to you what's going on from a biological perspective. The strength of your will is directly tied to your ability to be present in the moment. This is because every single time you do anything, you're not actually making the choice unless you're present. Why? Your brain is all connected. Everything is hooked up to each other. And whenever something happens to you, whatever happens, whatever the first thing that your brain says to do, that is actually just an impulse. That is what automatically fires off in your brain. That is the strongest synapse, strongest connection in your brain. Just because some of those connections are things that you like to do or want to do doesn't mean that you choose to do them each time that you do them. It means that you've made that connection in your brain, the strongest connection, and it automatically fires. When we have habits that are things that we don't want to do, it means the strongest synapse in the brain is one that isn't the action that we want to take. Free will is the ability to recognize what just happened to you and to say yes or no instead of going with the impulse. Free will is the ability to override impulse. And you might think that you can just override any impulse. No, you can't. That's why I say you have to earn your free will. You have to strengthen it. It's a lot like a muscle. This is why addictions steal people's free will. They take away their presence. First of all, most things that people are addicted to alter the state of your mind so that you're not present in the moment and you no longer can say yes or no to an impulse, but rather you're running on an autopilot of sorts where you're not really giving any input. Your brain is just taking the path of least resistance until you sober up, and now you can try to make more decisions for yourself. You have to understand that some impulses are really strong. The first time that you say no to them, they're going to fire off again because that's all your brain knows is how to fire off the path that it's always fired off. You have to correct this in real time. Okay? And the number one way that you strengthen an impulse is that you tell yourself that you need it. You tell yourself that it gives you some sort of benefit. You tell yourself that it has a use. How you get rid of an impulse that you don't want is you start telling yourself it doesn't have a use. It doesn't have a function. Once you start telling your brain that something is useless, it gets rid of it. Use it or lose it. That is what your body operates on. Your body does not want to spend its energy and resources upkeeping something that you don't even use. That's why if you don't ever use your muscle, they go away. Why would your body spend its resources to upkeep something that doesn't have a use to it? If you want to get rid of an impulse, you have to get rid of the feeling that it does anything for you and instead recognize the usefulness of the other thing that you want to replace it with. And it's a lot like going to the gym and getting stronger muscles too. Every single time that you assert your will over the impulse, it gets stronger. I want to point it out in a really obvious way by using addiction because it's one of the most clear examples of when our free will is taken away from us and how in regaining it, people can become very confused. Find somebody that has recovered from any addiction and they will almost always tell you that they've relapsed many times before they got sober. Why did they relapse many times? It's because addiction is one of the hardest impulses to break. Why? Because your brain likes to conserve energy. Your brain likes to optimize to use the least amount of energy. It's a evolutionary side effect, okay? So when you take certain things and they make you think significantly less, they kind of give you a shortcut, a cheat code. That's why a lot of people are addicted to Chat GPT. They don't have to think, it's given to them, right? Your brain likes that. Evolutionarily, it likes to optimize for getting the result with the least amount of energy put in. That's just biology. You have to understand that, and you have to understand that that's why your brain is actually wanting whatever you're addicted to. Okay? It's because it's creating less work for the brain. So basically, what's happening every time somebody has an addiction and they try to stop, every single time the brain is firing off to do that impulse and they are saying no, they're strengthening their will. What happens when they relapse? Well, what happens when you go to the gym and you lift a very heavy weight over and over and over and over and over again? You eventually fail. You eventually can't do it again. You do whatever that exercise is until failure, right? When somebody relapses, we look at this as a failure, and a lot of people go back to the same addiction because of the guilt of the relapse, when really it's the opposite. Because what happens when you go to the gym every day and you exercise until failure? What happens? What happens to you when you exercise until failure is you get strong very quickly. If you've ever hit a plateau in the gym, all the fitness influencers will tell you to do sets until failure, or to do drop sets where you're exhausting yourself. You're absolutely doing as much as you can until you can't go anymore. Because that's what makes you stronger the quickest. Now, every single time you say no to an impulse, you weaken that connection in your brain. And every time you say yes, you strengthen it. So what they really don't realize when they relapse, that they just did a set until failure. And if they hop right back on the train of saying no to that impulse, they will be totally free of whatever addiction they had in no time. The thing that usually sucks people back in is the guilt. They want to escape the guilt of failing and relapsing. Little do they realize that that is a natural progression of actually taking hold of the thing. You pushed yourself all the way to the limit. It's not actually the failure that people think it is. Like, yeah, it doesn't feel good for that to happen to you, but so long as you get right back on the horse, you're good. So long as you don't give in and then re-strengthen that connection in your brain, you're good. And this can apply to anything. Maybe you don't want to eat fast food, and every time you drive past McDonald's, you tell yourself no, and then one day you tell yourself yes. And then you feel guilty about that. You don't have to feel guilty about it. You just need to know what's going on. You need to understand that you hit a limit of your will, and you need to break down what in your brain told you that it was useful to do that thing. Because every single time you do something that you know that you don't want to do, it's because somewhere in your brain you've called it useful. Somewhere in your brain you've called it useful, so your brain keeps going to it as a solution to a problem. Now, maybe you can't let go of the fact that it's useful when it's not. A lot of people like to lie to themselves. And if you can't get rid of lying to yourself and saying something is useful for you, then that it actually isn't useful for you at all, instead of doing that, just say that there's something that's more useful than that, okay? Say that there's something that's more useful than that. If you smoke a cig every time you're stressed and you say that that relieves your stress and you can't, that's not true. I mean, that's just scientifically not true that it relieves your stress. It doesn't. But find something else that relieves your stress more. There's more than one thing to relieve your stress. So instead of saying that it's not useful, just say that there are other things that are way more useful. So in the end, it's not really useful. You know what I mean? When you have presence in a moment, you understand that whenever something happens to you, you're not deciding what fires off in your brain. The first thing that fires off in your brain is always just the strongest connection. It's not actually what you want, it's what you've used the most. It will always be what you use the most. So until you've done the thing that you want to do, done the behavior that you want to do, until that's the most used behavior, you're always going to have to be present in order to stop the impulse and do what you actually want to do. I hope this is really making sense. This is kind of a shorter topic, but I just really want there to be a really good understanding. Whenever anything happens, your brain automatically fires something off. You do not choose that. You don't. And this is like the debate of like, do we ever really make a choice? People have that. Like, or is it just like our brain automatically firing off? This is where the choice comes in. You have to be present to make a choice, and you have to understand that whatever you just felt or thought or wanted to do isn't you, it's the impulse. It's the thing that you've done most often. So it's the strongest connection in your brain. So it's the one that's going to trip the fastest. Every time you tell your brain, no, that's not useful. What I want to do is this. You strengthen the thing that you really want. And this is why free will is so great. Every time you're telling your brain, that's not useful to me, what's actually useful to me is this, and you're doing that thing instead, your brain is forming a new connection. That's the strongest connection, right? Over time, it becomes the strongest connection. That's why this is actually not as hard as it seems, because you don't have to upkeep constantly intervening in these impulses. You can actually get these impulses to be things that you want to do. And then you're pretty much just on autopilot, living healthy, living exactly how you want to live. And you don't need this escape, because your autopilot is your escape. Your autopilot does everything that you need to do. I feel like we do this weird thing in our society where whenever people give into their impulse, they feel guilty for it. Instead of feeling guilty, I think that we should all make the mental shift to understanding what is biologically going on with us. And instead of feeling guilty, just understanding the only correction that you can make, the only correction that you can do is to rewire your brain. In other words, don't use the connections you don't want, and they will go away. We have neuroplasticity that they literally disappear, and strengthen the ones that you want. And then your life's going to be easy peasy. Okay? It works. I've tried it on myself. I've told other people they've tried it, they've done it, it works, okay? And I know that like maybe some people know this, but I did not know this. Like I knew a lot about neurology, and I still didn't connect the things. Like I just knew the facts, but I didn't know the application to my actual life, if that makes sense. So I just want to put this out there really quick. If you have a struggle, if you have a habit you want to replace, this is how you do it. I know New Year's is right around the corner, so I thought that this might be a helpful one to put out right about now. Everybody's going to try to get some new habits for this new year. And if you want them to actually stick, there you go. That's how you do it. It's pretty simple. It just takes some commitment, and it takes the understanding that the second that you don't do something that you want to do, like you fail at doing the new thing, the most important thing is to immediately get back on doing what you want to do, because you are either strengthening the thing that you don't want or weakening it. And you're either strengthening the thing that you do want or weakening it. All of your choices, they have an effect in your brain. So yeah, that's it. And as for my next video, I can't really decide which one I want to do yet. I'm either going to talk about vanity and how vanity could like save society, and how we have a totally backwards idea of what vanity really means and is, or I want to talk about why man-made meaning. I appreciate you for being here and listening to my little rants about free will, and I will see you soon.